So welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with Trina White and Michelle. I'm so excited.
Me too.
Rocco couldn't join us. She had a conflict and she's super bummed. In fact, before we hit record, Rocco had to jump on so at least you could see us. So Rocco's with us in spirit. Trina's part of this topic that we launched on Leadership Soundbites around lessons in leadership and has been graceful enough to step in and be able to share some of her experience. So you and I met at Sutter Help 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Whenever
almost 7. Yeah, actually 7. Yeah.
7 years. I mean, it's a blink. I was with my mentor this past few days. In fact, yesterday I told you I was in 5 different planes over 3 days. And so she and I, when we first met, and I was telling this room of leaders, it was back in 2012. And she's like, has it been that long? And so it's like when you blink, time just goes by, right?
Yeah. Time moves weirdly.
Yeah, it does. And then someone told me once, the closer you get to death, the faster it goes. And I know
that's true.
This is not our topic, but here's what happened, right? Because I went through the hypnotherapy certification program recently and learned some stuff. Yeah, because I needed to know that. But I learned stuff about our brains, right? That you go through because they did different things on neuro-linguistic programming. So it was like a mixed bag that you learn all different things. And the thing about the time thing, and I know this is a complete diversion from what our topic is.
It's okay.
Step back in. The thing about the time thing is that if we're going someplace new, our brain is mapping that thing at new because it hasn't gone there before, right? And so our experience of time is slower. Mm-hmm. Think about when you go someplace and you're driving there, you're going, oh my gosh, this is taking forever, right? You return home the same place you did and it feels faster.
Right.
Well, it feels faster because your brain has already been there. And so you're not having to map new roadways or pathways or whatever people in that world call it, right? So if you think about what happens as we get older, time goes super fast when we're younger, or it goes slower when we're younger because all the new stuff we're learning.
Right.
Okay, you're stepping into new roles, you're challenging yourself new ways, you're doing whatever. When you're in a classroom all day, the time just kind of drags by if you're really challenging your brain to learn new stuff because you're learning new stuff. Versus as we get older, the majority of people don't learn new things. They don't do new things. They don't challenge themselves in new ways. And so the way our brain experiences time is quickly. Just a little tidbit.
It's so interesting. Absolutely.
So,
and I guess a good point to help keep yourself young is to keep learning new things.
Yes. Which is why I'm now in an AI mastery class.
Awesome. Good for you.
What the heck, right?
Good for you.
When in Rome. So this topic on Leadership Soundbites, we've got a number of leaders. Like I said, Trina's one that I'm super excited to spend time in the room with, and hopefully you're used to my tangents and I go off on little things because things are connected to things.
I love it.
So I'm going to kick us off with a quote. One of them, I know we landed on 2 of them. And so the one we're going to start with is Kesey, Kesey. And it's, you don't lead by pointing and telling people someplace to go. You lead by going to that place and making a case. And so, Trina, when I think about this quote, I think about you as a leader. I've had the opportunity to spend time with you. You and I've had discussions at different points. I've been able to support members of your team. When you were at Sutter Health, you work currently now completely. So let me back up a minute. So when Trina and I met at Sutter Health, she had a VP of operations role for the medical foundation, one of the medical foundations at Sutter Health, and went on to the maternity and surgical and
SMSC.
Yes. Yeah. And then went over to surgical services. You were at the foundation, and then you became CEO over surgical services, walk-in care, urgent care, ultimately Sutter Care at Home. But that's not where Trina is today.
No.
So
it's a little bit of a shift.
Yes, a little bit of a shift. So you're assistant professor at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in the College of Public Health, which I think is freaking awesome.
Thank you.
And so that's the space you're in now. And so when I think about the quote that we just said and leadership, I connect you to this by a phrase that we heard at Sutter Health, but I truly believe is walking the talk. So you're not just going to point people to say, go do that. You're in there leading and developing with them, alongside them, showing them the way, because you are the way. You are doing it. You go to Gemba where work happens, understand where things are getting in the way. And that's one of the many attributes that I look at you as a leader and think this is one of the things that epitomizes effective leadership, is that authenticity, credibility, and just willing to step in and do it before you ask other people to be doing it. So I'll stop talking because there was a tangent at the beginning with some other stuff.
That's
so
okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for that. That's really kind of you to say. And honestly, I feel like if you can go to the front line and see where work is happening, they actually show you how to do things and you learn how to support them. So I think it's just such an important quality of leadership to really go be shoulder to shoulder with people and see how you can help make things better.
Yeah. And you do that well. You did that well. And I'm sure you're going to be doing that well in your new role as well. So here's my question. One of them, when you look back on your career, because part of this lessons in leadership is this twofer, right? If you look back, okay, what are those kind of pivotal moments that you look and go, that was really a defining or critical moment in my life, and maybe you didn't realize at the time, or for my leadership, or maybe somebody that really helped form who you are as a leader. The other is, if you could wave your wand, right? I'm going to give you a wand. If you could wave it,
great,
and go back and have a do-over, or do things differently, or nuances in your leadership journey, what would that be? What stands out for you on that kind of stuff? So those are kind of the two little topics that we want to unpack today.
Yeah. Well, great questions. And I'm so glad that you're doing this series. I think it's really wonderful. Anytime I think about critical points in my career so far, it's always been about those mentors that you meet along the way. And I've been so fortunate to have so many. I also think, honestly, that you learn as much from people that you don't resonate with as the people that you do. And sometimes that can be a really uncomfortable space for people. But sometimes you learn a lot about who you are as a leader when you're reporting to a leader that has a really different style than you have. And so I've really tried to take that in. And as I mentor others, helping them work through that, kind of our line in the sand is respect. We should always respect people, always treat them with respect, but otherwise there are different styles of leadership, and they may not actually be a good versus a bad style. It's just different styles. So that's one of the things I've really tried to take in over my career, and then really tried to help with mentoring others. But back to that first statement, had some incredible mentors along the way. And I think, mentorship is a really important thing to incorporate always, all the way through your career, whether you're an early, mid, or even late careerist. And I also think, things have evolved. It's not a traditional mentor-mentee relationship anymore, in my mind anyway. It's really us mentoring all each other. Because even if somebody's an early careerist, I guarantee that they will know more about something we kicked off with, AI, than I do, even though I'm really trying to learn a lot about it. I guarantee that they're going to know more about it than I do. So I always feel like mentorship is a two-way street. It's an even exchange. It's a chance to really, help each other. But each person is helped, and it's not this, for lack of a better term, it's not this power differential that it used to be. So I've had many great mentors over the years. And one of the things that I really enjoy now is mentoring others. And I really try to spend a lot of time doing that, because I feel like that made such a difference for me. And I feel like it's my opportunity to give back to people.
I love it when you think about one of the things that stood out, mentoring, obviously the two-way street, my brain went to playing to your strengths, right? Because if you have a team come together, it's not about time on the earth, experience that you've had, or anything else that, hey, I've been here longer. And so I know the way, and I'm going to show you the way. But to your point, you look at the outside world, it's like rapid fire evolved. I mean, blink and you may miss something, all right, how do you stay relevant? How do you stay, up to speed on what's going on? But that's part of it. The other thing that I want to hit on is this, what can you learn from people that aren't like us? Right.
Yes.
So when you think about that, right, because I've watched you grow and evolve in the time that we've been together, right? Because you are a very thoughtful, considerate, there's this strength about you, but you don't,
thank you.
you don't step into the room with that. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Yeah. And so I've watched you evolve over the years and step into basically your full potential, which has been really awesome to see.
Thank you.
But what stands out for you when you say, because you called out you can learn from people that are not like you,
Right.
without naming names, what stands out for you on something that you've learned that's had an impact on you as a leader, in that realm?
Absolutely. I mean, to me, one of the things that really stands out is honestly what you were just talking about. There's some people that just walk into the room and own it.
Mhm.
And I think this kind of goes to the second question that you wanted to touch on, which is, what advice would you give your younger self? And I try to then give this advice to anybody that I'm in a mentoring relationship with. Think about how to always improve yourself and become a better human, because as you become a better human, you become a better leader, right? But there's also this concept of stay true to yourself, stay authentic to yourself. And I've met a lot of people that can walk into the room and just kind of own it. That's not me.
No.
And that's okay. And so one of the things I've really been trying to teach others, because this is something I wish I would have been able to tell my younger self, is take advice, take feedback, but also recognize and understand when it's okay to let that go and to not incorporate that into yourself, because nobody can be you. You need to be you. You don't need to be, somebody else. You need to be the leader that you are. And you're on your journey to becoming a better human and a better leader. That doesn't mean that you need to develop qualities that you may admire in others if it's not authentic to you.
It was so funny when you're saying that. There was a recent, it's a flow chart, if you will, algorithm flow chart, something on LinkedIn that I reshared. And it was around feedback that you get from people. And it's like, okay, is it someone you really care about? So what? Let it go if it's not, right? If it is, then, so it goes through this whole cycle. And the bottom line was, at the end of the day, that what you just talked about is, we make the decision on what to do with the feedback we get.
Absolutely.
Because the feedback we get is another perspective on whatever interaction took place, right? And it's important to have optics to that. It's important to understand, where that's coming from. But at the end of the day, you've got to analyze it and look at it and go, is this feedback that's going to move me forward? Right? Or is this feedback that's going to anchor me in the past?
Right.
And we can let it go if it's going to hold us back. But we have that choice. And I think that's an important call out. Don't take it personally, right?
Absolutely.
But take it in and say, what good can I do with this? How can this move forward? How can this better me? How can this, to your point, keep me authentic to who I am? And then go, okay, thank you.
Exactly.
And let's move forward, because everyone has an opinion.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And honestly, almost always given with good intentions, right? Yes. Opinions are almost always given with good intentions. And I think, of an example, just to kind of illustrate what we were just talking about, I had a really great leader, and I won't name names.
No.
Really great leader, super talented, super intelligent, had gone for different promotional opportunities and wasn't kind of receiving them and was a little bit frustrated about that. And, you know, she asked for feedback, and some of the feedback that came was, you need to develop an executive presence. And she was really frustrated about that because she felt like she had an executive presence. And so we talked about that a little bit. And I said, well, you know, what does an executive presence look like to you? And it was the own the room thing that we were just talking about. And I said, you know, I used to think that too. And I really did. I used to think that was the only executive presence that you could have, or that there was. And I learned kind of the hard way, as I tend to do, that there's a lot of different kinds of executive presence. And so in being able to talk with her about that and work through what's your authentic leadership style, your executive presence is a reflection of that, not of somebody else's definition or style. She was able to incorporate that and feel so much better about it. And then that executive presence follows, because all executive presence is the confidence of your leadership style. And that you're making a good or a positive impact for other people.
Exactly.
And that can look a lot of different ways.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because in my head it's about the confidence, the authenticity, the clarity of leading, the vision, all that stuff, being able to be articulate, right, as to what that is with the team in front of the room. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're running for political office and you're super charismatic and people just talk to you, right?
Right.
After a while, what happens though is that and I go back, it is the confidence, it is all that stuff. And then you just step into who you are. And, you know, you can compare it to somebody else, but you're you.
Absolutely.
And you're whole in that. And I think that's powerful, because the other is, if I try and show up as someone else, right, who's not me, that inauthentic self will shine through, and people will go, what are you hiding?
Absolutely right. And it's not going to make you happy.
No,
it just doesn't.
No, but you're not going to radiate what you think you're going to radiate. There's one other thing I want to touch on that we talked about before I hit record when we were talking with Roker. And it was this whole idea that the lonely at the top thing.
Yes.
Because what we talked about with leadership, when you talk about lessons in leadership and looking back, and I've hit on this with some other leaders too, is the further up you go, and I'm going to call it the food chain. Okay. The food, you go in the food chain. The less people that you have that you can confide in, or feel like you can confide in, or be real with, or whatever that may be. And a lot of times the decisions that you make, and this I think is self-imposed at some level too, can feel like solitary decisions. Who can I go to? Nobody else owns it but me, that kind of thing. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, great topic. Thank you. Yeah, I do think leadership can be lonely. And to me, it's not necessarily the level of leadership that you're in. And sometimes it's not even a title. I mean, to me, I've met lots of people that are leaders that have titles that may not reflect what we would traditionally think of as a leader. I think, you know, part of it is integrity, in the sense of you do the right thing even when somebody's not watching. And the right thing is defined by you and your value set. So finding people that you can soundboard with about that, and making sure that you're being authentic to yourself, making sure that you can talk about and talk through different things if you're having difficulty with the decision, sometimes helping you to see where your role is in that. I mean, you've helped me do that, Michelle, countless times, where, you know, I was concerned about something and you said, okay, what part of this can you control? And is your control direct, or is it through influence? And let's talk about a plan, you know, for how to take action if it's not really in your control, or if it's something where you have to influence versus direct. Let's talk about, you know, what your action plan can be. So having somebody that can do that with you is super helpful. And, you know, I think sometimes there's different parts of that conversation that are confidential that you can't share. But honestly, I mean, you and I have worked through things like that where there's parts of it that were confidential that I couldn't share, but we could still talk through a scenario. And being able to have somebody that can soundboard with you is so important, you know, whether it's a mentor or a coach. I always recommend that people try to find a mentor or a coach outside of their current organization, because sometimes, you know, having somebody that can kind of listen impartially can really help you work through things too. So I think, you know, that's part of what you were asking about. The other part that you were asking about is just that feeling of loneliness, and how do you, you know, how do you handle that? And I think, to me, you know, trying to make sure that you can recognize that in yourself and thinking through, okay, now I've got to dig even deeper and think about how to reconnect with others. When I was feeling that way, I would honestly, you know, I'd go round, whether in person or sometimes if conditions existed that we had to be virtual, I would do that virtually. Being able to reconnect with my team and reconnect with my purpose of, you know, helping patients, helping my team, or now in this new role, you know, being able to reconnect with students. That always helps me recharge, not feel lonely, but being able to get to that reconnection of purpose. And then the third thing I'd want to say about that topic is thinking about work-life balance. And I'm gonna give you a bias of mine. You know, there's this thought out there. Yeah, I've heard people say, you know, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I don't think that's true. I just don't. And I think it can actually be kind of, honestly, kind of psychologically harmful for people to think that. I do think you need to have a work-life balance, and I think it's okay to think about it and act on it and soundboard with people about what they see you doing that you might be able to do better so that you can have a balance. You know, the longer I've gone in my career and the older I get, frankly, the more important I think checking in with yourself and with your trusted mentors or people you soundboard with about that work-life balance becomes even more important. So I really encourage people to think about that. And I encourage leaders to take accountability to check in with each other and with their teams and with the people they report to. To me, it's every level of the organization. Ask people how they're doing and then stop and listen. And if there's something that you can do to help them with their work-life balance, talk to them about it. I think, you know, especially going through the pandemic and now kind of coming out, hopefully coming out of the pandemic, it's become more important than ever. You know, it's reminded us all how precious life is and how precious time with people is and how precious that work-life balance is. So being able to just have that conversation, you know, people always think about, what can I do? Ask the question. Sometimes it's just asking the question and listening. People don't need you to solve it for them, but if you could just listen, I think it makes a huge difference.
One of the things you said earlier, thank you for that, was around basically feeling heard, right? There's a lot in that. I have to laugh when you said, you know, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I've heard that. I tell people, like, with me, what I do, I love what I do. I'm coaching and developing people and helping people get unstuck and all that. I love it. But here's the reality. When I was thinking about that, as much as I love it, because I will never retire totally.
I know.
But my goal is like part-time and have flexibility and do the other, because I think the main difference between those two, when I think about it, Trina, is that even if you're doing in work something that you love, you still have accountability and responsibility to others beyond yourself.
Absolutely.
And I think for me, the difference when you said that just now, and I hadn't really thought about it before, to be honest with you, is when you have that life part, right? It's you have a choice whether or not you've got accountability for someone else and responsibility. And sometimes it's nice just to sleep in.
Yes.
You know, not have to set the alarm for 4 a.m. because you've got a 6 a.m. coaching call.
Yes.
So I 100% agree with you on that, and hadn't really thought about it in that way till you just said it. So I have one last quote, and then I want to hear what you want people to walk away with. Simon Sinek, and along with what you just said about taking care of your people. Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. And I think what happens, to your point, is don't be so focused on self that you forget to look around at what other people are going through. And they don't necessarily have to be on your team. They can just be other humans that you check in and say, hey, how's it going? And so I appreciate that comment. And so that's where that came from. So I appreciate the time. I have missed being in the room with you, virtual or otherwise.
Oh, likewise.
And I so appreciate this time. So what is one or two things that you would love people to walk away with on this topic around lessons in leadership and work-life balance, or being authentic, and, you know, learning from others and executive presence, all the mixed bag that we had around lessons in leadership?
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And thanks so much, Michelle, for this opportunity and the time together. I really enjoy working with you on any level. So thank you for that. Gosh, one or two points. We've talked about so many things. You know, to me, it comes down, I'll try to make it to two here. One, always watch for your work-life balance and how that helps you to be a better person and a better leader. And two, and every team I've been a part of as a leader, we've always talked about this, always put the safety and engagement of your team first, and everything else great will follow that. And to me, that goes back to the point we talked about with, you know, how can we take care of each other as people?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. I have to agree that you've led that way. I think that the thing that comes to mind for me is, because to your point, we've talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I think anyone listening, that if anything resonated right on anything that you did, don't try everything at once. If all these levers are things that are not even close to what you're doing right now, pick one.
Mm-hmm.
Pick what's a little bit better. I mean, I spent the day in the room with one of my primary mentors yesterday, Margie Hagany. And so she reminds me of today's not the only day. And, you know, what's a little bit better look like? Two phrases that are attributed to me now that people have learned.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's where they came from. But I think that's it, is there's a lot of lessons that we can go through. Pick one and say, you know what, this is the thing I'm going to focus on right now, and then get better at that, and then pick another one, because today's not the only day. So, thank you again.
Thank you.
I mean, I freaking love hanging out with you.
Likewise.
So we need to do more of it, and I'm so jealous of the students that get to be
well.
and so I want to hear more of those. I want to hear those stories about how things are going and your ability to impact them on a level that I don't think they would have had the experience otherwise.
Well, honestly, it's a privilege to work with students. So
thank
you.
Yeah. Anyway, until next time, Leadership Soundbites with Trina and Michelle, and have a great one. Thank you.
Thank you.